Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Live podcast. Today we have Rowland Hobbs, CEO and co-founder of Stake. Stake is building the financial infrastructure for the next generation of rentals. Rowland, I'm so excited to chat with you. And obviously we've all been renters and I'm particularly interested in the current experience of what renters are dealing with, how kind of the environment has changed in the last however many years that you've seen it change. And Stake has been around since 2018. And just from that transition, of course, I'm assuming that's been huge changes to the market, but also this interesting piece of incentivizing people based on the life that they're living, whether it's they're renting an apartment or a house or what have you, and how you can kind of impact and influence and kind of reward them in an environment that's not necessarily self-rewarding in that respect. And people don't think about rewards and renting. So I'm interested in hearing what Stake has kind of to offer their customers and more about your journey as a founder. But before we get into all that, what were you doing before you started the company?
Oh, wow. Well, first, it's great to be here. Thanks so much. So this is my third company that I founded. But right before starting Stake, I was a management consultant. I worked with Fortune 500 CEOs on crises. So I was literally like part of a team to be dropped in when companies were like not doing well. Like there was sort of like, they're in the headlines for the wrong reasons. And we were the team going in, which was really great. It was a lot of adrenaline. It was a lot of fun to be able to go and do that, but it didn't have a very strong mission or purpose, right? Kind of what you'd save a Fortune 500 CEO from being in the news, and you didn't necessarily feel like that was super rewarding at the end. So I really wanted to go back to one, I missed being in the startup world, and then two, I wanted to do something that had a bigger mission, bigger purpose to it.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about. I think from another standpoint, big companies, when they go through kind of, whether it's risk management situations where they have to manage their overall perception in the world. And it's different because startups can have such a dynamic and quick, whether it's a pivot or transition or kind of but what goes into crisis management, just out of curiosity for the audience, in regards to whether perception, whether it's operations, what goes into it, and what are some interesting situations, without getting, I'm sure, too detailed, what are some interesting situations you've been in, and how did you help alleviate the risk?
Oh my gosh. Well, my role was in product and loyalty. So more or less my role was to be able to make sure that as whatever was happening to the company, stock prices drop, product isn't doing well, somebody's hand stuck in the cookie jar, and it shouldn't be, whatever is going on, and so that they don't hemorrhage on their core customers. So I've always worked in loyalty strategies and loyalty programs in my whole career. My first company, we worked with American Express on their membership rewards. We worked for the Amazon as they created Amazon Prime. So my job was like, how do you end up keeping your core customers in a crisis? So the problem is you have something bad has happened to the company and you need to keep people engaged, right? And when people are reading in the news or seeing or hearing from their friends, like, hey, this is a company that's having a problem, you don't want to go buy from that company anymore. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We saw that last week with the run on the banks, right? Like once the word is out that, hey, this isn't working at Silicon Valley Bank, unfortunately that spreads pretty quickly. My job was to focus there, but that's a line between like, how do you communicate things better when things aren't going well, but how do you turn it around and actually make people care about the products again? So, but that's what I was doing then. And it's a fun world because you get a lot of adrenaline when you come into it, but it's hard to turn a big ship, right? Like a company that has that many employees and is that entrenched. And sometimes the things are just, they're not ready for the disruption that happens all the time in the world today.
Yeah. And in regards to like, when we think about loyalty, because I think a lot of founders are just oozing at keeping their customers, not only acquiring customers, but keeping them and retaining them, especially when things don't work out. Is it dependent on the product? Is it dependent on the programs you set around your customer base and your relationship with your customers? What's been, in your mind, successful for companies to focus on when thinking about loyalty and customer loyalty and retention? Is it what creates a strong loyalty ecosystem, and is it different based on the product that you're providing?
Yeah, it is going to be different. I mean, if you're a B2B, it's going to be different than if you're B2C. If you're business to business and you're selling to other businesses, it'll be very different side of business to consumer. But if you're thinking about loyalty, you draw a line down the middle of the page, and one side is going to be kind of left brain, the other side's right brain. You're going to have like a very strong like brand loves. Like people are in love products in a way that sometimes they can't express. And it has to do with relationship. It has to do with feelings. It has to do with a lot of stuff that's really hard to measure. The other side is the thing that you can measure, which is churn. How many customers are coming and going? How many are buying new products from you? Kind of think about improving versus declining customers. And all of that asides that you can directly measure because it's way more like you can incentivize that change, right? You can actually put an incentive. Hey, if you buy this product, I will give you X if you buy this product, right? And then that's how miles work. That's how what we do at Stake with cashback for renters works. But what you want to do is that you need to be able to take that right-hand side with like this data, very data focused, and then surround it with brand love, right? And make it so that people actually care about this thing that you're giving them. So you can measure it, but you also make people care about it.
Yeah. And how much does like experimenting go into that kind of ecosystem? Thinking about obviously having foundational metrics to make sure that whatever you're testing or whatever you're putting out there, you can see its success rate, but also with that creative piece and getting people attracted, that can go in so many different directions. And we all have crazy ideas on how to acquire new customers and retain them. But yeah, how much is testing involved in that ecosystem? And has there been a situation where testing kind of actually has diminishing effects and starts to push customers away?
Yeah. Your last point is well taken. You do have to be careful about like, you need to have a lane that you're going down, but hey, you want to have an idea, which is where your qualitative research, like your design research could be important to at least get the, like, we believe X and now let's go test it. Yeah. So with Stake, we do cash back for renters. The question is how much cash back in each property, right? So what we provide is you could have some of our properties have 2% cash back when you pay the rent. Some have 8%. Why the difference? Well, every property is different. Like there's some that are trying to lease up and they need to get a lot of heads and beds, people to sign leases quicker. So they're probably going to have a higher cash back amount. Others are just trying to be able to keep the residents that they have and get them to pay on time. So they do a lower cash back amount. But we can literally test on our platform in the same way that you might test like a Instagram ad, right? Where you're saying like, here's creative that offers 2% cash back, and here's an offer that offers 3% cash back. Let's see how it's performing and look at over time. So what Stake is created as a way for property owners to be able to use this to figure out what's the best incentive to be able to give to get the best result. Now, what I'd advise for other founders is you can do these types of A/B tests pretty well using your CRM systems like HubSpot or whatever, but you don't want to be so wild that you're doing like, well, I'm going to test a cashback approach and this one's going to be points, or if you need an apples to apples in your A/B tests. And also to your point, you don't want to freak people out by being like, well, what do you stand for? You want to be able to make sure that you keep both kind of consistent for folks.
Yeah. And describe Stake a little bit more to the audience who doesn't know. What was the inspiration behind the company? You were working in risk management for Fortune 500 companies. Why rent? Why rentals? Why think about this ecosystem? Honestly, and being in New York yourself, why tackle this huge kind of market? I mean, it's massive and it's always moving. It's fast paced. There's a lot of velocity and there's a lot of stakeholders who kind of are involved in this ecosystem of renting. What was the inspiration behind the idea? And what was the catalyst to start and jump into this project?
Yeah. So funny. So real estate was new to me. Loyalty had been something I'd worked on for 25 years. So I was very into the idea of loyalty, working with a lot of big brands. If it was working with Taco Bell or Weight Watchers, I mean, not at the same time, but like these are companies that was like maybe some synergy you might be able to get there. So I love this thing of being able to work to help people spend less on marketing and more on keeping their customers. Like give less money to Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook ads, give more money to your customers and try to keep them and improve it. So I love that idea. And on the other hand, I was hearing every time you hear a loyalty presentation, they talk about the two biggest categories of share of wallet, which is how they talk about like, how much do we own of the customer? They talk about travel and shopping. But when you really think about how much you spend every month, your biggest cost is your housing cost, not travel or shopping. It's so when I don't know, it's called Chase Sapphire, which is really good at marketing their card. They're looking at getting people to shop more, but they don't consider housing. So the initial thing was, well, how can we tap in to housing? And so for the first 2 years, we experimented with a lot of different ideas. We experimented with, should it be you get equity in your home that you live in as a renter? Should you get points? What about coupons? And the best way I could learn to get up to speed fast was becoming a broker in New York. So I'd never done this before. I showed a lot of apartments in New York. And if you've ever been through like the rental process in New York, there's nowhere more crazy than New York for looking for an apartment. But it was a great way to talk to a lot of renters really fast. I was really not very good at it, to be very honest with you. I was not a very good broker, but I was able to talk to a lot of renters and you'd ask them what they cared about. Like you put different things in front of them. Widgets make you help you rent this apartment or this. And there was one moment where a renter stopped me and he was just like, it's the money, stupid. Like, I just care about the money, like spend the money, because rent is so expensive. It's only the money. So that's where we focused on the cash back approach. And because people just care about the cash, they don't care about like a coupon to Applebee's. They don't want to manage points that are kind of, oh, what am I going to do with these points? I have to go in and manage it. They're worried about how expensive the rent is and how to be able to make savings and a little bit their financial journey easier. So Stake in 2020 created a cashback rewards approach, and we rolled that out just as COVID hit. So, I mean, like literally it was like we were rolling it out and the world comes to a crashing halt. But what was fascinating is as COVID hit, there was more subsidies or more help. And what was called the rent moratorium came in, which meant that people didn't have to pay their rent on time, right? They in many areas, it was like, hey, that became a big problem for owners and operators because if people aren't paying their rent, they're not making money. So we became very popular at that point because we were giving a positive reason for people to pay their rent. Hey, pay your rent and you get cash back, where before it was very negative. You don't pay your rent, you get evicted or you get a late fee. So we were able to come in with a very positive solution to help owners and operators and still get more money into renters' wallets in the process. So we created this kind of win-win at the right time in 2020.
Yeah, and from a founder's perspective, did you go after the operators first, or did you go after the consumers? I'm assuming it would be more strategic to go over the operators, create that kind of ecosystem, and then they kind of trickle that down to whoever the renters are, and then they kind of pay back, and they create that system. It's like you're pitching almost that they'll get the rent money on the time that they want to, and incentivize that. What was the strategy? Did you go after operators, and how was that learning process?
We went after the owners and operators first once we figured out what the consumers wanted. So that's what we did at first. We did this thing of like becoming brokers and using the New York brokerage system to be able to meet renters, figured out what they wanted. But that was never going to scale. That was just a way to learn. Because if we couldn't figure out how to actually influence the renters, we couldn't help the owners and operators. Once you went to the owners and operators, what you get in real estate is, and this was something that was a problem for me at first. I'd worked at mostly Fortune 500 companies most of my career, like big companies where it's like, even if it's big and it doesn't move that quickly, at least it's one company. Yeah. Real estate is highly fragmented, right? You may get an owner who owns, let's call it 90 apartments, but they may use different property managers. And even within their organization, there's a big difference between the people who manage the revenue, who manage the asset. What they mean by asset is the property, and the property managers are on site. So it's very, very fragmented. And there's not a lot of, even though that you have a couple big players who manage a lot of properties, there's actually not like a big company that owns all the properties. There's a few that are big, but they're not as big as like a Fortune 500 big. Yeah. So what we had to learn was how to be able to find the right revenue managers with the right sort of portfolio, who had the right problem to work with. We're now 40,000 doors across homes across the US. But that was the process of like, hey, we talked to the revenue manager. We're talking to people at the beginning, mostly in Georgia and Texas, who are having a hard time with delinquencies. Now we've expanded quite a bit, but it's been a process to kind of get that go to market, right? Like, and get the right people who are there. And it's a very fragmented world. Rentals are very fragmented. So I had to learn a lot in those couple of years there.
Yeah, I've been in those rental lines. Those are definitely brutal, especially with 50 applicants in one location in East Village and going to the same apartment.
The line out the door where like everybody's putting their name in and you're just like, you gotta get your money in right now to be able to do it. There's not a lot of time to be able to think about it. New York's brutal for that. I mean, but it was a good place to be able to talk to a lot of renters really fast. So that was good.
Yeah. And now describe the mechanics of giving, historically it's been difficult to say, have incentives or even pay rent with a credit card, right? It always have to be a cash transaction or some kind of transaction that is liquid, right? Describe what it meant to be able to not only give cash back, but also create the mechanics behind being able to pay rent without having to do like an ACH transfer or give them a check or something like that. What was involved in that process?
So we started, there's something called property management software. So property management software is what the owner is using to be able to figure out, hey, who's in 5H versus 1D and how much they're paying and if they paid on time.
Sure.
So you create these integrations with the property management software. So what happens is that property management software tells Stake if somebody's paid on time. Stake puts that money into their Stake account if they've paid their rent on time or completed whatever action that the owner wanted them to complete.
Okay.
So that was kind of phase one for us. Like that was just hey, we can see that somebody has done the action that the owner wants them to take. We can give the renter the cash back and then you get in the app. Then we created a way for the renter to pay directly using Stake Pay, which is our Visa debit product. So it's a debit card, it's full checking account, and they can earn even more if they pay through Stake. So now they can pay however they were paying before, but we actually incentivize them to pay through Stake as well, through Stake Pay. So we can cover everybody in a property because we're tied into the property management software, but we also have Stake Pay, which can help. And so we kind of do both. And that means that there's no fees. Like if you're paying with a debit card, we have no fees. You're just getting more cash back when you pay with the Stake Visa debit.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does this change the ecosystem? I could think about so many different ways that this changes the rental experience, being able to even choose properties that say in the future, give me a better percentage back on my Stake debit card. Is that kind of what the overall, or one, how has the market changed in terms of renting and renting habits? And then two, how do you see Stake playing in this long-term kind of a relationship with renters and now operators, being that it seems like renters have a little bit more of a choice in the decision when they're thinking about finding the property that is going to best not only serve their living conditions, but also reward them for that relationship of paying rent and getting a percentage back.
Yeah, I think that during COVID and up until maybe even 6 months ago, and still in some markets, rents were increasing dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're kind of flattening and it's becoming a little bit more of a renter's market than it was before. We've been doing cash back through both of those. I think that what we see is you see renters who are choosing to save that money with Stake and are saving for something. So as you get to know what somebody's saving for, I was mentioning kind of that heart and mind before, the heart side of it is like, hey, I'm saving to go for a home. I'm saving to buy a home. Somebody else is saving because they want a new car. Somebody else is saving because they want to lower their student debt or pay off their loans. And those are real emotional reasons. Those are somebody thinking into the future. So because we know people really well, we have this really strong emotional connection, right? Because we kind of know what they're saving for. We can help them reach those goals. So yeah, we have a lot of renters who we call them stakers. So stakers want to stay at a Stake property because they want to keep earning. And we give them incentive to be able to do it. For the owner, what's great of being able to say, hey, I want a staker coming in is they're getting somebody who has a higher propensity to pay on time because they want the cash back. So you're getting a renter who's more likely to pay. And you also get somebody who's more likely to stay. So you get somebody you get both a pay and a stay. Like, I stay here because I get more cash back. I pay my rent sometimes, I get cash back. I've created a win-win in a world where renters and rentals aren't always in a win-win, right? It feels a little adversarial and it can feel tough. So now we've created how everybody can come together and everybody comes together around the money. So we kind of make it work on both sides.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned you were across, I think you said $40,000 across the US. What's been exciting about not only building that traction, but what in terms of the next year, what are you excited about in terms of new features or just expanding more of the door that you're kind of servicing, more customers you're providing different programs? Tell us not only about how you're able to get to that traction, but also what you're excited about in terms of the next year that's to come.
We just launched our credit builder product. So we now not only give you cash back, but you can report your on-time rent payments to the 3 credit bureaus. So that's Stake Credit Builder. We launched our express paycheck products, which means that renters can get their paycheck up to 3 days earlier, which means you can pay their rent on time if they're using our banking product. And we launched Stake Pay, so you're getting more money with that. So we plan to keep on offering more and more financial incentives. So we think the problem isn't like you pick the home because it's probably near where you need to live. All of that's kind of covered by the asset, like the physical side of the location. But what you don't get is the help around your wallet. Like, how am I going to keep affording this? How do I afford to stay in this neighborhood? How can I keep savings while I'm renting here? And we really want to be able to have people come out at the end of that doing better. So one of the cool things that we're studying right now is the effect on the overall community. We call it Community Health Index, which is not just how the renter's doing, are they saving more? And not just how the property's doing, is the property doing better? But it's the whole community improving as people are renting in that area. We're actually looking at that from a lot of economic indicators. So I think we'll give more data to owners to show how much better their cash back is doing. We'll give more to renters to be able to help them save more. And then we'll do more for the community to show like, hey, here's how when you have stakers in a neighborhood, the whole community does better. So that's kind of the three legs of the stool that we think about as renter, rental, and then the community overall. Like how is the community there?
Yeah. Do you have any hypothesis on how it'll affect the community or what's been able to, what you've seen as positive outcomes for stake?
Yeah, we've seen, for the community, we've seen people spend the money locally. Ooh. So it means that a lot of the money can go more locally, but we've also seen indications, and we want to see how the data really comes out of this. But what surprised us is how much people are spending on everyday essentials, right? That they might be, if that's, hey, they're spending on their medication that they may need, or they're spending on grocery, but they're doing it in the neighborhood directly. So we think that can have a lot of impact on the local economy, where it's been tricky recently for local economies to bounce back after COVID. I think there'll also be other interesting side benefits, and these are only anecdotal, so we haven't got the whole data yet. But a lot of people talk about things like, hey, I'm able to spend on the things I love. Like I may just go and like want to take a dance class, or I may want to be able to, I want to go and plan up at the gym. And this allows them to be able to spend money on something that they maybe really wanted to do that's just kind of for them. So I'm really interested in those stories as well, like what they're doing to just be able to treat themselves. Like it's tough to rent and money's tight. And then if you can go and do that Pilates class, or if you can go and take that dance class, or whatever it is that you wanted to do, that's really awesome. And that helps. That's a better thing for the community. Is also better for the renter as well.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that stake faces today?
We're doing something really crazy hard. Like we're going and saying to landlords, how about you give money to your renters? So you don't really think of your landlord. It's like the person is like, just like handing out cash. So we're on this transformation of changing how real estate can work. It happened in other areas. It happened like with credit cards. It happened in hospitality. It happened with Amazon and Amazon Prime. So it's not a new idea being able to create a win-win in this way, but it is a new idea for real estate. So the challenge for us is that we have done well by having partners who take that risk and go, I like the way you're thinking about this. I want to prove it out with my portfolio. The challenge is that you want to be able to get people who can start imagining what the world's like if that works. So painting that picture, painting it with data, and showing that data, and so we have that when you spend $1 in cash back, on average, you get $2.14 in return. So the challenge becomes finding people who are willing to be able to take that journey with us to being able to keep proving that with data and showing what that is. I think that the economy right now is a challenge because it's making budgets really, really tight for real estate. But at the same time, it gives us this opportunity because they need better ways to outperform. It's interest rates are a lot higher, which isn't great for owners and operators. It's a lot harder than it was 3-4 years ago, or even just last year, to be able to refinance a property, buy property. So I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Budgets are tough, so it's harder to be able to win. But on the other side, it's also, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to show owners that they can outperform in an environment they really need to outperform. They have real problems in front of them that they need to solve.
Yeah. I love this next section. I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions, and then
I love it. Let's do it.
Good. Cool.
I love the rapid fire. All right.
Perfect. Let's do it. First question is, what's particularly hard about your job?
Remaining connected to the renters.
Yeah.
So you're focused on owners so much. And I love just the side of being able to talk to renters and hearing what their challenges are, but remaining connected to them. So I try to talk to them every week, but that's always a thing. It's a double-sided marketplace. So you have to focus on both sides, but remaining connected to the true end customer is a big challenge.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about rewards programs, and you've had such an experience with loyalty and customer loyalty. Are rewards programs, I guess let's fact check on this question. When is a situation where a rewards program or loyalty program have you seen just not necessarily successful for either a certain type of product or service, or are rewards programs and loyalty programs underserved in terms of most products or services and companies that are out there? What's your opinion on that?
There's always 10th burrito free, right? So they'll go and be like, we have a loyalty program. We give a 10th burrito free or 10th coffee free and whatnot. And that's loyalty. That's a loyalty program, not a loyalty strategy. Because if you're just doing 10th burrito free, you're giving away something that you may not need to give away. So you may be losing money and you have no data to prove that's going to work. So a loyalty strategy is where you say, I have this very particular area I need to make more money on. I need to change behavior. And what is the thing I need to change behavior on? And can I target that and make that change happen? So I think that a lot of times people go and be like, well, I'm going to sign up for a loyalty network where, hey, they get some points in this network. That may be a lot of work to put that in, and you're not going to get a lot of return. And you're kind of doing it because you just want to attach the word loyalty to, but it doesn't have a strategy to it. So I think that's where, and trust me, I've seen a lot of loyalty programs fail a lot. As a consultant, that was keeping me in business, right? Is that a lot of people couldn't make them work. And that's because they couldn't target the right thing. But if you think about people who really make it work, Amazon Prime, more people belong to Amazon Prime than voted in the last election. So they made it work, right? Yeah. So there's ones that are like so good at being able to make it work that they've really made it work. And then there's a lot of stuff where it's like as a 10th burrito free strategy. And that's just not that interesting.
And is that because of the way that you mentioned it, they target the wrong thing? If the wrong thing, say they're incentivizing the wrong behavior that they're looking to kind of having the customer kind of re-engage with, or are they targeting the wrong incentives around the product? What have you seen in some of those common mistakes with loyalty programs that other founders who are maybe thinking of retaining their customer can kind of avoid the mistakes of other companies?
Yeah, I think that you have to, so it's just not knowing what the size of the problem is. So how much do you spend today to acquire a customer, your CAC, like you have your cost of acquisition,
right?
What is that lifetime value of that customer? And then how much are you willing to pay to get a new one, kind of then times by how long that you're going to be able to keep them. You can start getting a sense of the size of like, what is this worth to you? And if you don't know what it's worth to you, you can't size how to do the loyalty program because like, you just don't know what you're willing to spend. And when you don't know what you're willing to spend, you end up kind of trying to not spend anything, right? You're just trying to find a freebie. And when you try to find a freebie, people don't respond to free because they kind of see it. And that's where you get the like, hey, what if we just gave this away for free or give some swag or like whatever it is you want to be able to give somebody that's like, you just haven't really sized the problem here correctly. So it starts with data. It starts with knowing your business. And then it's like, okay, well, instead of spending on the top of the funnel, like just getting customers, can I spend a little bit more to keep the customers?
Yeah. No, that well said. In regards to your experience, this is not your first startup. This is, I think, your third startup so far. What is something you know now that you wish you learned earlier on as a founder?
That's such a tough question. I would say the hardest thing as a founder is knowing as you scale when to let go. Like you want your instinct is to stay very involved in all the different things. I'm sure if you ask my team, they'd be like, yeah, everyone's probably too involved in too many things. But like, it's when do you start letting go and go like, okay, that's running itself. And now you're in more of a leadership position. But when does that time come? And how do you find that difference? And I'm not sure if I think I'm getting better at it. It's my third startup. You never get perfect at it. But I think it's the hardest thing. So all the things that you did as a founder early days, like the things that got you from 0 to 1 aren't the things that are going to get you from 1 to 3, right? Like the way that you did that from 0 to 1 is you were there. Like you had to go as an example, I had to go and show a lot of apartments. If I was going and showing apartments today, that'd be a really bad idea it'd be a waste of my time. But it was the right thing then. But my instinct was still to go and talk to the renter, as well as mentioning before, like I want to do that. So how do you kind of learn the new things that you need to do at the right time for the company and stop doing the things that may have worked early on, but you just can't keep doing it. So I think that's always a tough thing for founders to get. And at the same time, you don't want to bake out what you're really good at. Like you may be the person who's like, you're really good at, like you say, if you're an engineer and you're really good at coding and now you're not coding anymore. Well, that's a shame because maybe that's what you should be doing. That's what your secret sauce.
Yeah. And what's something that you find yourself spending more time on that you would like to spend less time on? And what's something that you spend lesser of the time that you want to, but maybe want to spend more time on? Anything that comes to mind?
I spend too much time on, I hope our investors aren't listening, raising capital. And I wish I could spend more time on selling. I think we've raised over $17 million. We're doing fine, but it's always more time consuming than you expect. And it's always on. Like you don't really stop with that side of it. And I wish I could spend more on sales.
Yeah.
The reverse of that, gosh, I mean, I think that in the company, one of the things I go back to the renter thing. I wish I could spend more time talking with our renters. I love doing product work. Like I'm naturally somebody who likes to really get involved in the product, but more time gets taken with investors and sales. Sales is great. Like, I don't mind doing the sales work, but I wish I could spend more time with our renters. We just had teams out all across the country visiting all these different properties everywhere and meeting renters and whatnot. And I was so bummed not to be able to go. I mean, it was a decision not to be able to go to focus on other things, but I would have liked that. But it was, that's the time we actually see like the impact that we're having in people's lives. And that keeps me really inspired.
I love that. And I always like to ask this next question because I love how founders extract information and knowledge or anecdotes from anything that they ingest. So if you were to think back, whether it was early in your career or even now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
People. I'll start with books. Measure What Matters, which is probably the only business book I think anybody should read. I think that the kind of the OKR framework, while really hard to pull off, and you have to keep working at it to pull it off in a good way, but it's kind of the Bible. Like when I get stuck on something, I go back to Measure What Matters. And I think a lot of people do, so I'm not unique in that, but I would kind of so I'm not a big business book person, but I do like that. I think the people that have influenced me the most, I always look at hospitality. So I got to work with very early days was what was called Starwood Preferred Guests, which is now Marriott Bonvoy. So it's the group that really created loyalty for Starwood hotels. And anybody who stayed in Starwood hotels at that point was like, they loved Starwood hotels. Yeah. The loyalty program was great. And the people I worked with there were just so smart at how to be able to combine that like heart and data and be able to get the heart around it. And one of the things that they very early days taught me is that if you're able in a hotel to be able to get the front desk staff to be able to greet somebody by their name within 10 minutes, that you've created, like, I can't remember what the number was, some dramatic increase in loyalty. Like they're more likely to stay in that property again and whatnot. And it's just as simple as like recognizing and seeing that person and recognizing them by name.
Yeah.
Hey, well, and so it always stuck with me, like this kind of like simple idea that seems like, but they'd actually followed through with the data. They knew exactly what it was. And that's how they trained their front desk staff, right? They trained their staff to be like, if we could get this to happen. So it wasn't just the loyalty points, it was this loyalty like heart as well that was built into it. So that was really fundamental or foundational for me. As I kind of learned. And I think it's important just not only we do loyalty for, that's what we sell, but also just in your business. Like what are those things that matter to people? A lot of times it's just very simple things like thanking somebody, welcoming a customer, can be more impactful than anything else.
Yeah, the training piece is interesting in having everyone around a culture. So it's like this common experience that guests can share amongst each other. And that's kind of like the goal is not only a shared experience, but the feeling behind it. And it's so exciting to hear about ways that other companies are doing it successfully, whether you have a similar product or your product functions in a different way. Creating that kind of ecosystem is hugely important for the success. And I like to make sure before we, obviously, I know we're coming to the close of the episode, but before we give you a chance to let us know where we can find you and where we can find State, I want to make sure we didn't miss anything. So is there any question I didn't ask you that I should have or that you would have liked to answer? Anything come to mind?
Oh my gosh. No, I think we covered it well. Sometimes people find on my LinkedIn profile that I really like popcorn and they talk about popcorn. But I think that it's funny in this thing with being a founder right now, maybe the thing we haven't talked about is the state of, it's tough out there right now. Like raising capital is going to be really hard for a bit. Like the valuations have shifted. The market has shifted from a year ago. There's a lot of conversation about like, hey, how do you manage burn and be able to stockpile cash and all of this? I would really encourage founders, or maybe I'm just talking to myself in this and reassuring myself, but I think you also have to have conviction on your idea and survival is important. Like you do want to be able to survive and get to the other side, and you do need to manage your money well, but it's also like, it's by definition risky. Like being a founder and doing a startup is risky. And this is a time where making bold bets can really pay off if you have really strong conviction. So I would try to encourage everybody, on founder side to tune out the noise, like turn off Twitter and don't look as much at like people saying like, gosh, like the sky's falling, and really look and see what your business is doing and where you can make some big bets. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be really scary the next 24 months for sure. But I also think that be bold at the moment is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, my kind of thought that we haven't got into is just the current environment is wild at the moment.
Yeah. I love that. And because you brought up popcorn, and I actually have strong opinions on this, what are your top three? What are your top three? How would you rank the top three microwavable popcorn brands by quantity of popcorn, fullness of kernels, flavor?
Oh
I
man.
have an opinion on this. Let me hear yours first.
Okay. Okay. First, never microwave popcorn. What are you doing making microwave popcorn?
In a pitch. In a
This is
pinch.
not. Well, then it's Orville Red popcorn. It's gonna be the Orville.
Really?
We always go for Orville, like the kernels or that, but we never make microwave popcorn. Although there was actually. Oh my god, what was the brand that we got years ago? There was a microwave popcorn I liked years ago, and I accidentally ordered 5 cases of it instead of 5 boxes, and we ended up with like just our closets were like popcorn.
Yeah.
So much popcorn for a while. But anyway, okay, so you tell me, because I don't think they can say Orville for that. I have ways
For
of
that?
making the popcorn, but never microwave. Yeah.
I'm going recently, believe it or not, Skinny Pop has reached my top in terms of the fullness. Yeah, it goes Skinny Pop, then it goes actually Costco Kirkland brand, and then Orville. Right below that, if we're thinking flavor and you want to like really indulge, we go Pop Secret, of course. Really get that artificial butter flavor.
That's gonna have the like. Oh yeah, that's gonna be like a lot of. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but this, I gotta try it. What was the first one again?
The Skinny Pop. The Skinny Pop came out with a really strong craveable popcorn brand. Yeah, yeah. And then
I'm gonna try it this weekend. I gotta try it, and this maybe pull me off. We always do it in the skillet. We have the whole thing, and like you have to add the red pepper flakes and the
okay, you know like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got to do it like. But you may convince me to go microwave.
Might have to. Well, Rowland, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, learning about your background, your experiences, really the whole loyalty ecosystem, and how honestly founders can think about better ways to really address the behavior that they want to re-incentivize, bring their customers back and retain them. That's been a fascinating conversation also about renting and how you're kind of creating this whole ecosystem to really support people who are spending a lot on their daily lives. And the more that we can foster that and give them the ability to spend, I think long-term is going to have some longevity. So last little bit, where can we find you? Tell us where we can find Steak. Give us your LinkedIns, your website, your Twitters, all your plugs. Let's hear where can we find you?
Yeah. So you can find Steak at stake.rent, STAKE.RENT. Steak.rent is where we are on the web. And then everywhere, Twitter, Instagram is at Get Your Steak. And so Get Your Steak is everywhere. And then I'm at Rowland Hobbs on Twitter and LinkedIn. But it's ROWLAND HOBBS. So that W is sneaky. That's in there.
I love it. Rowland, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And thank you so much for joining Behind Company Lines today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course.
Take care.